Today's guest is MadTV standout, master of impressions, Dirty Jersey's own Aries Spears. Also, huge boxing nut. Let's get into this, man. I grew up watching this guy. I'm excited. There he is. What's poppin'?
Yeah, what up, big boy?
What's poppin'?
That was good.
Thanks for joining us.
I'm in LA. I'm in LA like you,
What's good, brother?
Are you in LA? Yeah, so I'm trying to get home from my office. So, man, I'm in the mean streets of Beverly Hills. Sorry.
Jeremy's you're familiar with Jeremy's fights, right, Aries? Can't hear you. We heard you. Not now though. We got you.
I might not be.
Say it again.
Yeah, I might
It's
not
so
be.
good.
No worries,
Forgive me.
man.
Jeremy was a pretty popular heavyweight in the 90s and early 2000s. Yeah. To request specific fighters to be interviewed, to request specific fights you want analyzed on Box Analysis, please guys, subscribe and follow to our YouTube channel, and we're going to make it happen. Peace. So you're in LA, but you're from Jersey, am I correct? Or are you from where are you from originally? I'm from Hell's Kitchen, born and raised. What part of New York are you from?
Oh, that's west side of Manhattan.
Yeah, I grew up on 50th and 11th.
9th and 10th.
All right. So how old were you when you moved to Jersey?
Probably like
Okay.
elementary.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I told you this, but I own a comedy club, so you and I probably know a lot of the same people. I had a comedy club for about 15 years. It was in Manhattan. Now it's in Brooklyn. So yeah. We know a lot of the same people. So I get that. But we're here to talk about boxing mostly. I had heard you mention a bunch of times that when you were younger, you boxed a little bit. Is that true?
I had fantasies, man. I thought I was going to be the next big thing, but then I found out you have to have discipline and you got to work out and you got to eat right. So, I don't come from that kind of stock, man. I come from, my mother's from Mississippi, my father's from Tennessee. So salt and grease was relevant in our house. You know what I mean? So I had love for the sport.
Right.
I just didn't have the
So
discipline,
did
man.
you have fights? Did you spar? Like how far did it go?
I forget what they called it. It wasn't like the YMCA, but there was something in the Jersey area.
PAL?
Like a boy, like a
Police
like
athletic?
that might have been it.
Yeah.
Pretty huge.
PAL.
It's pretty huge. PAL.
Yeah. So they had a boxing program, and like I said, I love the glamour of it and the brutality of it. But I just didn't have didn't have it in me like that.
It's not for everybody. It's not for everybody.
Yeah, that's one of the things that if I could have my next life, in my fantasy world, being heavyweight champion would be one of the things to be.
And I don't think you've ever impersonated any fighter, right? Have you ever done impressions of any famous boxers?
Oh, dude, Mike Tyson, Evander Holyfield.
I've heard
Oscar
Tyson,
De La
but I haven't
Hoya.
heard the others. Okay. Well, which one's your?
In my younger days when I was on MadTV, and then Oscar De La Hoya twice.
Did you add he had a bit of a, how do I put this politically correctly now? A bit of a softer kind of feel to his voice.
I thought I gave the guy a boxing lesson.
There you go.
A lot of good jabs, a lot of good punches. But he danced around the ring, and I thought I fought him good, and I hit him on a lot of shots. I can't believe I lost.
There you go.
I've known Oscar. I've done Oscar them in my whole life, and you're pretty goddamn close.
and I jokingly, I love Manny Pacquiao, but I always say I hate when he does after the fight interviews because he always sounds like a foreign exchange student. Like he be struggling to put them words together. Good afternoon, good punch to all of my fans in the Philippines. I want to say to them, uh, hey, hello, a lot of them in the gym, a lot of dogs. But to all my fans, I want to say to all my fans that I love you and I want to fight again. So yeah.
Damn. Okay. Yeah. I mean, Pacquiao. Yeah. I mean, so you said you did Holyfield? Like Holyfield to me, I mean,
You know, Holyfield to me was always, because he was so, like, you know, in his later years, he
yeah.
was so kind of like punch drunk that he wasn't really, he could be all over the place with one answer. So, you know, when I would do him on MadTV, I just did him as like really punch drunk. And then I would have like a skull cap on, so I'd be bald. And then you put that mustache on me.
Yeah.
And, you know, he always had that squinty face. So it was more of a caricature than anything else.
Were those things that you brought, sketches that you brought, or they wrote that, or they wrote it?
A little bit of both. You know, I would always tell people, man, in sketch comedy, it's like the writers are like tailors, and as comedians and artists, you know, they make our suits for us with the words and the sketches. So they measure us up, and if they know our comedic sensibility, like a great tailor that knows your body, they make the perfect suit for you.
How old were you when you landed MadTV? Damn.
22.
How long had you been doing stand-up at that point? For how long?
I started when I was 14. I've been in the game 32 years.
Like, what guys were?
Oh, like, you know, I was there during the inception of Def Jam. You know, Bill Bellamy, out of you know, East New Jersey, the Peppermint Lounge, Club 88, Tribeca, Indigo Blues. So I came up with a lot of the cats in the Jersey area. You know, Terry Hodges, Tracy Morgan. So yeah, you know, a lot of people credit Russell Simmons and Stan Lathan as the guys that, you know, were responsible for Def Comedy Jam. But really, it was a brother out of New Jersey named Bob Sumner. He really brought it to the forefront, and he took it to them. And because of who they were and their recognition and their power, they made it happen.
And how did you land MadTV? Was it a stroke of luck? How'd that happen? You
know, back in them days, it's not like this anymore, but back in those days, if you were a hot artist in LA, they gave you what was called a holding deal. So they would basically take you off the market for like 6 figures while they try to develop a show for you. And hopefully, obviously, the best scenario is to get a show. But if you didn't get a show, at least you made 6 figures. So I basically was like going from network to network for the first 4 to 5 years of my career, where I would get these holding deals. I'd make a ton of money, but I had nothing to show for it. So my last deal was with Fox, and the president of the network at the time, Peter Chernin, was such a big fan of mine that he was like, "Look, man, we really having a hard time developing something for you, but I love your talent. So we got this show called MadTV on our network." And I auditioned for MadTV the first year, but I couldn't do it because I was locked in a deal with Aaron Spelling, who of course created 90 Beverly Hills 90210, Melrose Place. And when that didn't pan out, I just eventually was in the right place, right time, and then they just put me on MadTV.
Yeah, I remember those. Todd Lynn, if you remember him, who passed away, he had like 3 or 4 developmental deals, I think they called them.
Yeah, development deals are a blessing and a curse, because you're gonna make some money, but the real money is in having a product. So, you know, when you come from nothing and you come into some money, especially 6 figures, when you're coming from the ghetto, that's a big deal.
Yeah,
and you get lost in that. But the bigger picture,
and I mean, 100,000 back in those days was worth a lot more than it's worth now. So it was a lot of money. Yeah. Okay. So how many seasons were you on MadTV for?
I did about 8
and that
years.
You know, my personal opinion was the best sketch show at the time on television, I think.
You know, there was a period in time where we really were kind of kicking SNL's ass, but the reality is Saturday Night Live is like the NFL. You know, anything other than that is like the CFL. You know what I mean? It's like no matter how good you are, you want to play in the big leagues.
try out for SNL? Hmm.
No, I never got the opportunity. And at that time, I was on MadTV. Lauren Michaels had a strict rule about if you were on one sketch show, you couldn't be on his show. But then later, he changed his tune, and like I think his name was Taram Killam, who was on our show for a brief moment. Eventually made his way to Saturday Night Live. I forget my man's name, Jeff something. Another dude who was on MadTV also made his way to SNL. So eventually, Lauren changed his tune, but in the beginning, it was a big no-no.
And how old were you when you started seeing your affinity for like those impressions? When you really started like knowing that you got a gift?
Early, my mother is a jazz and blues singer, so I've always had an ear for tone, inflection, rhythm, and she kind of introduced me into the business, and I just was a latchkey kid coming up in the '80s, so TV raised me. I got a lot of my early influences from television shows, and it's like when I hear a certain voice, a certain tone, if I can find the note, you can do the impression. Like one of my favorite impressions to do right now is Tony Soprano.
Yeah.
You can find it, Tony. You're talking about the X, talking about Janice, and I'm still. And Johnny Shack. So,
and it also
that ear
helps.
You got
I think with that one, like you grew up around dudes like that, so that always helps.
Oh yeah, Jersey, New York, Hell's Kitchen. Italians and blacks, we come from the same cloth.
For real. Yeah, that's because you're one of the rare comics I feel like who can do impressions, but also are a real strong stand-up. Usually they don't go together. Have you noticed that?
Well, yeah. Man, I came up in the '80s, and Richard Pryor is the greatest to ever do it. He's the Babe Ruth of comedy, but Eddie Murphy is the Michael Jordan of the comedy. And one thing I noticed about him was he was never a one-trick pony. He was great at impressions, but his stand-up was strong. And I think that if you're going to be the ultimate comic who does impressions, it's one thing to do a great impression, but can your impressions and your material coincide? I'm not going to say no names, but there's a guy in the comedy world who does phenomenal impressions.
I know what you're talking about.
Material is weak.
Yeah, I know exactly
I ain't going to say no names, but if you can marry the two, you're a problem.
Right. Yeah, no, it's true.
Right.
It's tough. But usually most stand-up comics, right? The end path is what? Movies, TV, right? Or for you, is it that, or is it do stand-up at the highest level?
I mean, it's a little bit of everything. I don't think anybody gets into this game to half-ass it. You want the creme de la creme. But everybody doesn't translate the same. There's some guys who are amazing impressionists, but they're not great actors. There's some guys who sketch, but could never do stand-up. You know what I mean? So it's that's why, again, I'm talking about Eddie Murphy being the Michael Jordan. There's no weaknesses to Eddie's game.
No, and he's I think he's coming. I mean, he was supposed to come back. I heard that he was hitting some of the clubs right before COVID, but then it stopped.
Yeah, Eddie, that rumor's been circulating since forever.
It would be great to have him come back. I think he did a little bit when he got that Mark Twain acceptance speech, right? Was that what it was? It was funny. It was good.
Yeah. Eddie got. Listen, man. When you a GOAT and you that nice, even if you're not what you used to be, it's a muscle, and it's a reflex. So when the situation presents itself, you don't ever forget how to flex the muscle. You know what I mean? So I always say that, like, Eddie Murphy in the 80s and 90s was what Michael Jordan was to the Bulls in the 80s and the 90s. But Eddie today is like Michael Jordan for the Wizards. He ain't the same, but he still put up 20 points.
Yeah, for sure. So is that who you looked up to in stand-up? Is that who you...
Oh, absolutely. Eddie Murphy. And then, before he passed away, God rest his soul, Patrice O'Neal was one of the greatest comedians to ever live. The only dude that I think
I knew
truly
Patrice.
rivaled Dave Chappelle.
With his I mean, it wasn't his wife, but with his girlfriend, I suppose, fiance. Yeah, that.
Real quick to the dude that I just read the line where he said, "Don't be a coward. Name names. It's called growth, nigga. I can't keep doing that. You know what I'm saying? I can be that dude, and when I'm that dude, it comes with a penalty. So, yeah, I can't, you know, figure it out. But yeah, I ain't naming names because I'm trying to, you know, I'm trying to leave a legacy. So I can't always, like Dave Chappelle, when keeping it real
I
goes
know,
wrong.
and you know, I've heard you talk about that. It comes with a penalty in this game when you say certain things. And as you get older, keeping it real isn't as important. You know what I mean?
Real quick, because I've done these lives before, and I want to make sure I get this in before it stops. Make sure y'all check out my podcast, man, called Spears and Steinberg, available on all streaming platforms. Slide into my DM. I'll personally send you the link. It is raw, uncut Bolivian yayo, baby.
Yeah, it's good. I've seen it. So let's shift gears a little bit towards boxing. Let's start this way. Who is your top 3 all time?
Muhammad Ali, Mike Tyson, and Sugar Ray Leonard.
Okay.
And you know, I hate when people kind of shit on Mike a little bit by saying, you know, he never fought, he lost against all the prime, the dudes who were considered great. He never beat nobody when it counted. Lost to Lennox, lost to Holyfield, never fought Riddick Bowe, never fought what's my man's name? George Foreman beat to win the championship when he was old. Mike Moore. And you know, listen, man, technically what sucks about that argument, because we know he didn't fight those guys, you could make that argument. Come on, man. Let's go with your gut. Let's go with the eye test. Let's go with up here. When Mike Tyson was with Kevin Rooney and Customato and Jimmy Jacobs, wasn't nobody fucking with him. He would have knocked Jesus out of his sandals. So let's knock it off. A prime Mike Tyson, a focused Mike Tyson beats Holyfield, Lennox, an old Foreman, Michael Moore, Riddick Bowe. He beats them all.
You probably don't know. Me and Jeremy were both. This is how we met. Kevin Rooney trained both of us in the early '90s. We were both up in Catskills. That's how we met. So we learned that style first. That style didn't really work out because we're both a little tall for our weights. But I agree with you. I mean, Tyson mastered that style, and at that age, the problem with Tyson is this: he peaked for about 4 years, right? And he happened to be mad young. He was what, 18 to like 24. He was peaking, and I think at that age, at that Tyson, I don't think anybody could have beat him either. But
nobody.
Then he changed.
Mike came from a Brownsville, no education,
nothing,
no parental structure. My man rolling his eyes. Why you rolling your eyes?
My daughter-in-law's on the phone.
Oh, it's not at you.
Oh, okay. I thought he was having a disagreement about what I'm saying about Mike. So I'm just saying, you know, look, at the end of the day, it's Mike's bed. He got a lie in it. He's got to be responsible for what he did. But he was the youngest heavyweight champion ever, a young kid, easily influenced. And the one thing that's so dangerous to have around you when you're young is pussy and money. If you don't have no structure, if you don't have no foundation, that'll fuck anybody up. And then the fact that people took advantage of him and fucked him over. He said one of the greatest quotes in regards to Customato. He said, Customato told him, you are a sheep surrounded by wolves in disguise, and you're not intelligent enough to know the difference. So, you know what I mean? So my heart bleeds for the man in that way. And what's most impressive, if you put it in perspective, when Mike finally retired, his record was pretty much the same as Muhammad Ali, considering he lost 3 years of his boxing career in his prime in prison. Like Ali lost 3 years for the Vietnam choice. So imagine if Tyson, without the cocaine, without the bad influences, without Don King, without prison, focused for them 3 years.
I agree.
That man's record would be impeccable.
But, you know, that's the thing with boxing. I think it's one of the only sports where you have to be at a certain level constantly. And I mean, at the highest emotionally draining level constantly. And it's really hard for a human being to maintain that for 10 years.
That boxing and sex are the only two things you got to be at a high level constantly,
yep.
or you get
And,
drained.
you know, people like Floyd did it. Floyd was able to do it.
Listen, I hats off to Floyd for the perfect record, but I don't know, man. If Floyd fights a prime Pacquiao, a prime Shane Mosley, I still think he could beat De La Hoya in his prime. But still, I'm just saying, he fought a lot of dudes who would have had a chance to beat him past their prime.
I still think Floyd would have beat them. And I'm not the big, like, I give props. Yeah.
Shane Mosley?
I think so. You don't think so, Jeremy? Well, Jeremy grew up with Shane Mosley.
We're the same team, the whole business. Shane's a very good friend of mine. All these guys you're speaking of, I know every single one of them. And De La Hoya, I remember Oscar beating the brakes off Cubans that was just like world-renowned fighters, man. I remember Shane just hands so fast, you can't even see the fucking things. You know what I mean? I know these guys from the raw element.
I just think Floyd, and I'm not a Floyd super fan or anything like that, but just give him props. Like, I'm a realist and that's what I see. But his mentality, you know what it is, Aries and Jeremy, when you get these guys who don't smoke or drink or do anything, and that's their vice, that's it. That's it.
Well,
yeah. Listen, the golden era to me, obviously for the lightweight, middleweight, not lightweight, welterweight, middleweight, was, the Sugar Ray era. Sugar Ray, Duran, Hearns, Hagler. If you put Floyd in that era, nah, yo, 50-0, nah,
it gets touched up, no doubt.
I think Sugar Ray Leonard would have given a real hard time.
Yeah. Young, and even Tommy. Tommy's came up from 19, from 119.
Did he?
Right.
Yeah, Tommy Hearns was a 119 pounder.
He's like 6'1", too.
Yeah, no, he's 6'3".
Damn.
And he moved up all the way in late in the career at 75. But Tommy Hearns was breaking fools' necks at 39.
Damn.
Man, that right-handed Tommy Hearns threw on Duran should have been arrested.
Yeah, that was fucked up. That was fucked up.
And that was at 40, they're 42, something like that.
47?
47, yeah.
Right there. That was welterweight, wasn't it? Yeah, that was a welterweight. Yeah, I mean, her.
You amazing, man. Like, I grew up on these dudes. I know these dudes. And it fucked me up because, fame for me, because of comedy, came when it came. And it's like, I know these dudes, but I don't expect them to know me. And I remember I was doing a show one time in Irvine, California, and I'm looking in the crowd, and I'm like, is that? And Sugar Ray Leonard is at my show.
Dope.
Tells me he's a big fan. Sugar Shane Mosley's son recently hit me up on Instagram, told me he was a fan. I said, man, your dad is the truth. His dad hit me and said, I'm a fan. So that shit fucked me up, man. When guys that I look at and I love watching and they know me, yo, that's a trip.
Yeah, especially guys who were fighting when you were at the peak as well. They're all going to know who you are.
Right. But when they were at their peak, I was a kid. So by the time I hit my peak, they were well and retired. I'm 47.
I'm the youngest of that team. I'm 50.
Of De La Hoya and Mosley and all them. Yeah.
We're all on the same team together.
Yeah.
But I mean, you're right. He's right underneath us. There's a three. Every boxing goes through a 3 or 4 year turn. Like every 4 years it turns.
Yeah.
Because of the Olympics. So every 4 years you get new guys. So.
And there's nothing like a fucking. I tell people, man, as exciting as a fight could be on TV, when you see it live, like I was at Tyson Bruno.
I was about to ask, what's the most memorable fights you've been to live?
Tyson Holyfield. I was at both fights. Tyson Selden. I went to Holyfield Bowl with the Fan Man. I was at De La Hoya Vargas, which was bananas. De La Hoya Hopkins. And in South Africa, I was at Grant Botha.
Who won
that? I spar with him.
Yeah,
He is fucking he's like, throw a wet blanket on somebody, trying to get it off you. I was like, God damn.
Well, it was wild because when I saw the fight, Botha was in his ass. And listen, Grant is cool, but he never could really take a punch. But he rallied at the last minute and knocked Botha out.
Yeah, but he's way taller, bigger and bigger.
The dopest fight.
It's amazing dudes that had that frame and that height and that build. Like you look at Frank Bruno. That motherfucker big. Shit like a bodybuilder. His boxing skills to me never was like.
If you watch that first fight with Mike, he was getting in Mike's ass. First guy. Yes, agreed. But he was getting in his ass a little bit, and that's when Tyson, I think, started slipping mentally at that point. Because I think the very next fight he lost to Douglas.
Yeah, but
was that okay? Might have, and that's another one that irritates me. Because technically, he won that fight.
He lost. I'm just saying that you saw in the armor for the first time, which you never saw before.
Right. Well, his team had like a fucking latex glove with ice as an inswell instead of an inswell.
Yeah, I still get him.
That shit was terrible. You know what fight I was at, which to me was the most amazing energy of any fight I've been to. I don't know if you're at this one, when Prince Nassim fought Kevin Kelly at MSG.
Oh, yeah.
Woof. The energy, people don't realize half the crowd were Brits who somehow flew in, and it was like every time one guy would drop, half the audience would rise, the other would sit down. And it was like it was crazy energy.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like when Tyson fought, and this wasn't Tyson in his prime. This was Tyson post-prison. When he would walk into the arena, the electricity that filled the arena, and he coming in there with that towel, the black trunks and shoes.
Yeah.
It was gladiator shit. You knew you was about to see something. I've never been in an arena with that kind of energy, except maybe seeing Michael Jordan play.
That's what Tyson's one of the few people that became superstar without having a real flamboyant or outspoken attitude. He was quiet, but it was like that pit bull. It was the fear that people, you know what I'm saying? They wanted to see it in his eyes because he didn't say shit.
It's like,
because
like
all the other big guys, Ali, all these other Sugar Ray, they were charming, they had charisma. Tyson didn't have any of that. It was just what you saw, like what you're talking about. You walked into the arena. Crazy.
Right.
So is he? Who do you think is the greatest heavyweight of all time? Heavyweight. I think
Ali.
So you think Tyson who fought Spinks versus Ali who fought Cleveland Williams?
Ooh! And you know what's crazy? Hand to God, I always mention that because here's how you know Ali gave him the business. Back then they called it a clunk. Now it's called a perm. He had that motherfucker's perm waving all over the air. When Ali did the motherfucking shuffle and hit that motherfucker would look like an 8-piece, that perm was shooting everywhere. Wow. And then you said Tyson Spinks. I got to go more brutal than that.
Ooh.
Tyson Jarvis Frazier.
I would feel like no.
When Frazier fell down in the
that
corner,
was the same Tyson.
Watch the legs. Yeah. He's out. The muscles is twitching. The legs is still moving.
A friend of mine too, man.
Oh,
Marvin's a friend of mine.
Let me tell you something, and that's one of the most often asked and intriguing questions. Young Tyson versus young Ali. I'm gonna tell you this. I think Ali wins on points barely, only because the reach, the jab, the speed, the footwork, the ring IQ, the ability that Ali had to fight going backwards. he would have kept Tyson at bay with that jab. My only question is, what happens when Tyson catches him? Because Frazier caught Ali. And
So
Tyson is 10 times the fighter.
Like, we're cool
Frazier.
with Roy Jones, right? So we asked Roy, we're like, what was it like fighting Tyson? And Roy goes, look, the one thing I didn't expect was how quick he was coming in, still at 50. So Tyson's, people don't give him the credit for the speed with his hands and his feet. It would have been that easy for Ali to avoid him because I think he was just as fast as Ali, if not faster.
Power in both hands. Great head movement, side to side, dipping, slipping. That would have been one of the most monumental fights ever. I just give Ali the edge because of that reach. The reach and the footwork. And a young Ali in his 20s could dance for the whole 15. Oh, you know, that's a tough one. And you know, another one that blew my mind. I remember when I was trying to, I was on my, I'm trying to lose weight shit. And I was going through, a really bout of depression. And I sent out a post asking people, yo, you know what I mean? If y'all got some tips or whatever on the weight thing, hit me up. Motherfucking Roy Jones hit me. And man, I got a trainer, a nutritionist, holler at me. I'm a fan. And
Roy's
I went, oh, my God. So, you know what I mean?
Did you
again, that
do it?
Is, damn. No.
Roy's a good guy, though. Roy's a good guy.
No, a very good guy. Very cool guy, man.
Okay, so let's go down now to middleweight. Who do you think's the greatest middleweight of all time? Robinson.
Sugar Ray.
Robinson or Leonard?
I feel like at middleweight, you think Leonard peaked at middleweight or at welter?
I think he peaked at welter.
Really welter. Really, okay, so, all right, if you talk a straight middleweight,
Do you think
Hagler.
Hagler? Do you think Ray Leonard beat Hagler?
Who?
No.
You think
Yes.
no, Jeremy?
Yes.
I think no.
Hagler's Jeremy's favorite fighter, so.
Let me ask you this. Both in their prime, Jeremy, who wins between Hagler versus Roy Jones?
Crazy.
Walks him down. Walks him down, bro.
I
Why?
don't
Why? Because he's southpaw and he's orthodox.
No.
On each side.
Roy Jones was a Corvette in a world of Pintos.
Yeah, and then Marvin Hagler was a fucking Ram truck in a world of fucking idiots.
Roy
Jones had power, though. People talk like he didn't have power.
No, speed is power.
And speed. But here's the thing. Here's what we found out about Roy when he got older and he slowed down.
I disagree.
He ain't got,
you know,
all his losses was one-hit quitters.
People realize Roy was about 36 when he lost. He had been fighting at that point for almost 30 years. He had a lot of mileage. I attribute that more to the mileage on his body.
30 years pro, 30 years amateur. Or
30 years total.
But you know, listen, as much money.
No, you're
Holyfield
right.
had,
You're right.
that chin
You're
was
right.
granite.
Look at James.
Take a punch. Roy, all of Roy's losses. But what was my man that really knocked him out worse than Tarver? Glenn the Truth.
Glenn Johnson.
Dude, that was one hit, one shot to the chin.
But you know what?
Roy ain't got no chin.
Any of those dudes 10 years earlier, it would have been.
But
nice.
those guys run around 10 years earlier. They weren't fighting that at that level.
We're doing hypotheticals here. If they were,
I think the speed of Roy in his prime, he would have evaded all of those guys. But Hearns, Duran, Hagler with that punch power, if they Roy,
Roy got hit though in his prime, and he was fine.
Not really.
Fighting. Yeah, man. Tony nailed him clean. Hopkins nailed him clean.
Not a big puncher. James
cleaning up.
not a big puncher.
Tony was a big puncher.
He's a sharp puncher. He's not a big puncher.
Well, Jeremy sparred Tony, but you sparred him at heavyweight. It's different. He's smaller than you.
I think he's a motherfucker way more than me.
Yes, but he's naturally smaller than you. I don't know. To me, Roy Jones is hands down the most talented fighter ever by far.
Would you think he's more talented than a 54-pound James Toney?
Roy Jones?
Yeah.
Yes.
No.
Take out a speedometer or whatever the fuck they use to measure baseballs.
Yeah, but being able to take a punch
You're
and having it change
right.
to count
You're
for
right.
something.
It should, and it does. You're right, but I look at it like you put him in front of anybody, all things being equal, Roy beats anybody. Like in terms of weight, size, you know what I mean? Who could beat him?
I don't know. I mean, dude. Roy Jones, phenomenal fighter. Nothing but love and respect for my brother Roy. And James Toney, one of the best fighters in our generation.
Yo, let's make sure we give love to and I one of the greatest documentaries, boxing documentaries on Showtime.
Oh my God, yes.
Hector Macho
I used to
Camacho.
spar his son quite a bit back in the day. Yeah, Macho was no joke.
Yeah.
Senior, we're talking about. Yeah. He was no joke.
But did Macho have good power? I mean, I remember watching the fight.
It was good.
I mean,
It was more speed, but it was good. Good power.
Cause he was a show.
All right, so let me make this racial for a second. It clearly seems like the best fighters are black. Right under there is the Latinos, because it seems like anytime the Latino fighters who were the top notch fought any of the black fighters who were top notch, they got dealt with. So,
Yeah.
you know, Julio Chavez, De La Hoya, Macho Camacho, Vargas, Felix Trinidad.
Yeah, but you know, it depends. It depends what era. If, Chavez lost to Taylor, or at least he should have, right? The first time, huh? Yeah, Chavez lost to Taylor.
No, but did
Meldrick
win that fight though? Technically,
Meldrick lost.
Stop that.
But
yeah,
no, he lost.
Taylor won.
But come on,
Taylor should have won. Absolutely should have won. So that proves your point. Yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah, Aaron Pryor beat Arguello, who was on top at the time. Yeah, I guess you got it. I guess you got a point.
Who wins between? Because they're both great defensive fighters. Floyd Mayweather in his prime versus Pernell Whitaker.
Whitaker got power.
Whitaker didn't have much power up top. Apparently, he had body shot power.
Well, dude, that's what slows everything down.
Right.
I don't know, man. That's a tough. I don't look. I'm not a Floyd Mayweather fan, but I do give props for what he's accomplished, and I can't take away what he's done. I don't know, man. Wait, who do you think?
I say Pernell. He was just so elusive. He was so elusive. To the point of boring sometimes.
Floyd Mayweather, boring as shit.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, listen, the 50-0, hat tip. But give me imperfection, and give me a perfect fight.
Well,
that
Pretty Boy Floyd
shit
was crazy exciting. Money Mayweather, now he became a little safe. Too safe. Right? Pretty Boy was not. You remember what he did to Corrales? I mean, Jesus, nobody was doing that to Corrales back then.
Like, why won't Floyd fight?
Why
Crawford?
didn't he?
Why?
Because he doesn't want to take any real risks now. He's 40. He's my age.
In that era of the 80s and the 70s, when did Ali never not take a risk? When did any of them fighters from the 80s never take a risk?
Never.
But don't forget, in the 90s,
everybody fought.
In the 80s and 90s, though, 30, that was old. Now, it's not old anymore. Those guys were at 30, 31. Do you remember that? Even in basketball, back in like the 80s and 90s, 30 was old.
Yeah.
Now it's not.
Right. I know he's hailed as one of the greatest champions, heavyweights of all time. Where do you is Jack Dempsey for real? Because he refused to fight black guys.
I mean, they all refused. I mean, Jack Dempsey was the first modern boxer who stopped going like, put up your dukes. You know, he's the first guy to put it there and come in.
Right.
He was one of the great heavyweights of all time. I mean, to me, Jack Right.
The best. How can you be the
to
best?
me, Jack Johnson was probably the most dominant heavyweight of all time. But because what he did back then, he was playing with everybody, playing with them, keeping a hold, hitting them and holding them up so they don't fall, so we could keep hitting them. Who the fuck does that?
Right. Real quick, to the dude that just said, I'm so sick and tired of Aries living in the 80s and the 90s. Step your game up, nigga. Match my energy. I stick with the uncut cocaine.
That's my era. Yeah, I think Jack Johnson was the most dominant heavyweight. Who's
right?
Who was more dominant than Jack Johnson?
First of all, didn't they fight for like
Jack
40
Johnson
rounds?
He won the title in the 26th round or some shit.
God damn.
Well, and what's crazy about back then was too, you didn't have to go to a neutral corner. When you stand down, you could literally stand over him with the ref right there, and once he got up, he was back on that ass. And because of how bad racism was, I remember when I saw the Jack Johnson documentary, they said at one point when he was beating the white fighters too badly, they cut the film.
That was when he won the championship. They cut it because they stopped the fight and they told him stop filming. So all you see is this camera just go as the guys are getting in the ring.
Right.
And then that's why Joe Louis made it a point to never be filmed with a white woman, never be taking a picture with a white woman, ever. Like, and he was fucking with white women.
Well, you know, in terms of that time and that era, Jack Johnson instilled pride in black men, but it was also the blessing and the curse, because when he demolished white men the way he did, it caused race riots. You don't think black men hung from trees because of his victories?
Yeah, it was a fucked up time. And then, but once Joe Louis was champion, it kind of stayed like it was mostly black heavyweight champions from that point on, right?
Right.
I remember the first white heavyweight champion was what's his face, Jerry Coetzee. He beat Michael Dokes in 1982. Yeah, and that was an upset.
I swear, man. It's now that I'm reminiscing. Again, it's so funny how many fighters I've met that know me. You know, my dad is who introduced me to boxing because Ali was his hero. So I remember one time I went to New York to do Sirius XM radio, and I was a kid when the Larry Holmes Jerry Cooney fight took place. And I remember I went and did a boxing radio show, and Cooney was there, and Cooney was a fan. So I was like, dude, if my dad was still alive and I told him this,
Cooney,
he would be losing his shit.
Do you remember the story? We interviewed Cooney. Do you remember the story with that? President Reagan put a phone in Cooney's locker room, and he goes, because he was the great white height. He goes, if you win, I'm calling you.
Right.
So when we interviewed Cooney, I was like, yo, is that true? Did Reagan really put a phone in your room? He goes, yeah. The phone didn't ring though. Because Holmes fucked him up. That's crazy. That's kind of fucked up though. But that's how it was back then. Yeah, Cooney could punch. So I've heard numerous fighters say that the hardest heavyweights say that one of the hardest punchers that they've ever been in there with is Cooney. Like he couldn't take a punch that well, but he could. Right? He's a big dude.
Yeah. I remember we were kind of like playing around. And one of the things he said to me was, when a lot of dudes fight, they don't even know how to breathe. And I didn't understand why that was so important.
Yeah.
Just being able to breathe. So, like I said, I've always loved and respected the science of boxing. I've enjoyed watching it. But you got to give, you know, when you know what it entails, you can't help but respect it.
So who do you like now? Who are your current top guys that you like watching?
You know, God, a lot of guys I don't watch as much because, you know, if I'm being honest, there's an American bias. So many of these now, particularly in the heavyweight division, I just don't know who they are. You know, again, I came up in that era where, you know, America was top dog. You know, you had Holyfield. I mean, you had Holyfield, Tyson. I know Lennox was British, but still, Foreman, Michael Moore, Riddick Bowe. You know, and again, the welterweight, middleweight division, it just was so American dominated that I was invested. I'm
So
not
you don't
as
really watch it
invested
now.
now.
A lot of us are not.
Hmm. Have you seen
Not
Tyson
really.
Fury fight? Not a fan?
Yeah.
Not impressed?
Yeah, dude. Listen, again, I come from that era, Tyson,
Yeah.
where it was must-see TV. We didn't have really. We just came into video recorders. If you went to piss, you missed it. That level of excitement
I
is
agree
just
with
it's
you.
You got a
unexplainable.
couple fighters, tanks like that. He'll knock somebody out just like that. Who else though?
Right.
You got the what's his name? Better Biev. You heard of him? He's a Russian.
No.
He's 19-0, all 19, but wins by knockout. Like a scary Siberian type. Yeah, like from Rocky IV kind of Russian. You should watch him make a fight.
Right.
He's knocking everybody out. But yeah, other than that, you're right. A lot of these guys, a lot of the top fighters now aren't as exciting as back in the day. So,
Right.
The past, the present will never compare with the past, because before us was Hagler, and I mean before us was Evander and all those people. Before them was Hagler and Hearns and Leonard. Like it always gets the further back it is, you know, the better the memories and the stories are. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, I'm gonna push out of here for tonight, but thank you for the time, and we'll just catch up with you later, man.
Appreciate it, man. And again, man, the podcast Spears and Steinberg, check it out. DM me. I'll send you the links. It's 100% uncut Bolivian yayo. Chichi, get the yayo. It's the real deal, baby. Hit me up, y'all.
For your time.
And thank you, man.
Sounded